Hello everyone, this is my first time trying to make a video in English, so let's see how this works. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Dominga, I'm from Chile, and I'm passionate about sharing about history. I'm a historian, I worked as a high school teacher also, and I love traveling and learning. I've lived abroad in 2 occasions, one in Paris for around 8 months, and another one in the States, specifically North Carolina, for about 2 years. So, in this occasion, I wanted to share a little bit about Chilean history. So, maybe you don't know a lot about Chile, maybe you know something about Chile. So, FYI, Chile's name is not because it has a shape of a chili. In fact, we don't call Chile's Chile in Chile. We call them ají. So no, we don't know actually what's the real origin of Chile's name. But today I wanted to talk to you about a specific moment of Chile's history, an epic moment of Chile's history and Chile's independence. So if you ever come to Chile, you will probably see it from the airplane, but Chile has a very unique geography. It's a long and narrow strip of land trapped between the Pacific Ocean, which is not so Pacific after all. Actually, it's a very dangerous sea, and the Andes Mountains. But the Andes Mountains aren't just like a single row of peaks that once crossed leads straight into Argentina. No, the Andes are more like a sea of endless mountains and snow, with peaks over 6,000 meters high or almost 20,000 feet, a width of 300 kilometers or 180 miles, and temperatures that can drop to minus 20 Celsius or minus 4 Fahrenheit. This is an extreme place. Few people dare to cross it on foot. But there was a moment in Chile's history when thousands of men had to cross it. It was a time where there was no Gore-Tex, no down jackets from North Place or Patagonia, no modern mountaineering gear, no GPS, no airplanes. This moment happened over 200 years ago. Back then, America, and by America, I mean the American continent, not just the USA, was nothing like it is today. Most of the territory was ruled by Spain. Spanish America was divided into 4 viceroyalties, as you can see on this map. All the green territory belonged to Spain. Chile was a kingdom, the Kingdom of Chile, and it was administered by the viceroyalty of Peru. In colonial times, American society was hierarchical, structured, very rigid. Everyone belonged to a group, and that group, based on skin color and origin, determined much of a person's life. Of course, there were some mixes between groups. That's why mestizos existed after all. But peninsulares and Creoles were encouraged to marry and have children only within their own group. Creoles born in America to Spanish parents had received a European or Western education. They could read and write, and they owned large estates. But they had a disadvantage compared to Spaniards born in Spain. They could not hold the highest colonial administrative positions, which caused, obviously, resentment. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, conditions were ideal for social and political upheaval in the American colonies. The Creole elite had already embraced the ideas of the French Enlightenment, the ideas of liberty, equality before the law, and popular representation. On the other hand, the independence of the United States from Britain in 1776 had proven that a colony could break away from its European metropole and survive. In fact, the US seemed to be doing quite well. And the final straw was when this guy, Napoleon Bonaparte, invaded Spain and took King Ferdinand VII prisoner. The French won't govern as people in the colonies declared, and in many places, local governing councils or juntas were created to rule in the king's absence. And so began a few years in which the Latin American countries, Chile included, started processes of self-government. In 1810, Chile formed its first national congress, created the first national library, and passed its first laws. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Chile hadn't officially declared independence from Spain yet, but for the first time, the Creoles were allowed to take part in governing the country. At this point, a key figure enters the scene: Bernardo O Higgins. He had participated in the First National Congress and, thanks to his military skills, had been appointed commander-in-chief of the Chilean army. He fought several battles against the Spanish and Royalists, but Spain wasn't going to give up its territories so easily. The American territories were a valuable part of the Spanish Empire and its wealth. Spain sent troops to crush the movement that aimed to achieve Chile's independence. Then came the Battle of Rancagua on October 2nd, 1814. It was patriots, those who wanted the independence, versus royalists, those who supported the Spanish crown. In this battle, known in Chile as the disaster of Rancagua, the royalists won. Spanish control was reestablished in Chile. So what happened to the patriots who lost? Many were killed. Others were exiled to the Juan Fernandez Islands, a remote, windy island with rugged terrain where survival was very difficult. Some switched sides and joined the royalists. Around 120 people under O'Higgins' leadership were forced into exile. But where to? They went to Mendoza on the other side of the Andes. They took what few belongings they had and fled. Mendoza seemed like a good refuge for the Chilean patriots. In Argentina, the independence movement had started in 1810 with the May Revolution. So by 1814, when the Chilean patriots arrived, Mendoza already had its own government. There in Mendoza was General José de San Martín, born in what is now Argentina. He dreamed of a free Latin America, free from Spanish rule. He believed that it wasn't enough for one country to gain independence. The entire continent had to be liberated. San Martín knew that to secure Argentina's independence, Chile had to be freed first, and then Peru. He commanded the Army of the Andes, a force that was preparing for a bold and seemingly impossible plan to cross the Andes Mountains, liberate Chile, and then move on to Peru. The army consisted of 4,000 soldiers, Argentinians, Chilean, black soldiers, indigenous men. While the army trained, spies were sent into Chile to gather information and spread disinformation to confuse the Spanish. The plan that San Martin and O'Higgins devised involved splitting the army into 6 columns, which would advance simultaneously and launch a coordinated attack in Chile. It was ambitious. Nothing like it had ever been attempted, and it could easily have failed, and many men would die. On January 17, in 1817, the Army of the Andes set out from Mendoza. It had between 4,000 and 5,000 soldiers, 1,000 civilians between cooks, blacksmiths, doctors, and family members, 1,500 horses, and 10,000 mules to carry cannons, weapons, and supplies. Don't imagine that all the soldiers were strong adult men. Many were just 15-year-old boys. Now imagine the difficulty of this task. All those people had to cross the mountains with uniforms that weren't warm or waterproof. They had to walk through mountain passes over 4,000 meters high with no roads. They endured -10 Celsius temperatures at night, often without enough fuel to start a fire. They had very limited food and supplies. For 3 weeks, they survived on charqui, which is dried horse meat, corn, hard biscuits, and some wine. Often they went days without hot food. Many suffered from altitude sickness, dizziness, and shortness of breath due to the lack of oxygen. Many soldiers and animals died from the cold, even though it was summer. Despite all these hardships, the crossing was a success. They lost soldiers, animals, and supplies, but when they finally engaged the royalist forces at the Battle of Chacabuco, the patriots won. Nobody would have thought this. This battle was crucial for Chile's liberation and its independence. José de San Martín continued on to liberate Peru, and Bernardo O Higgins was named Supreme Director of Chile, like a precursor to the presidency. It was thanks to this army of brave Argentine and Chilean soldiers who dared to do the impossible, cross mountains, snow, wind, cold, hunger, and uncertainty in pursuit of freedom. So if you like this video, please subscribe. I know most of my content is in Spanish, but I'm aiming to do more English content. So welcome to Somos la Historia, and I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.